When I say everyone, that includes you. There is life outside your apartment. I know it's hard to conceive, but there's life outside your apartment. And you're only
It's amazing how we find these songs. Isn't that a cute one, Eric?
Yeah, it sure is. It's not just amazing. It's actually a real talent because, you know, in TV there are people called music supervisors, and you totally could be one.
Oh.
Because what they do is they'll temp in music to kind of go along with a picture before they hire a composer, and that's basically what you're doing. You're scoring the show.
We are. Well, this is what we do at Home Wizards, where we let to kind of put a smile on your face. Eric Stromer, Cindy Dole here, and that is setting up our discussion on small spaces. I mean, we've all, if you aren't currently living in an apartment or a condo, everyone at some point in time has lived in a small space, right?
Absolutely.
And
you're talking about my college room.
Yeah,
it's like a prison cell, basically.
And probably, and maybe right now that's all you have is an apartment or a condo, and maybe you have no other choice, or it is the choice that you love because you've downsized and you're heck with the big home. I love having it simple. I don't want to have the headache. You know, a lot of people I know live in an apartment intentionally, and then they spend their money on other things like, you know, traveling or whatever. So whatever the reason is, we want to talk about how to not feel claustrophobic and how to basically have a space that is more spacious and also not as noisy, right? So what would you advise, first of all, Eric, in terms of the walls in this apartment or condo that we're in right now?
Well, for a couple of things to consider. First of all, if you are in an apartment or a condo, what you have to do is identify the sound source that is making either your neighbor complain or you're hearing their things in their apartment or their condo. So once you kind of identify what that sound is, you can address it from the soundproofing standpoint. And there's an amazing website out there called soundproofcow.com.
Soundproof Cow, huh?
Exactly, and it gives you a ton of great answers in terms of different materials that are available to use. And take a look at that if you're interested in going a bit further and actually purchasing some of their products, because they're pretty good. But what you want to do is identify the sound. For example, if you're next to somebody that does a lot of stereo stuff and low-frequency bass outputs from like a home entertainment center, then what's going to happen is that you got to figure out ways to get fabric up on the wall or baffle panels, and those are oftentimes either pre-purchased at a store like the one I just mentioned, or you can make them yourselves. And it's essentially like a fiberglass batten that has a nice piece of fabric over it, and then the back has like a quarter-inch panel of wood. And you can literally attach those directly to the wall, because then those low-frequency sound waves won't just come straight through the drywall, which is what they'll do. Mm-hmm. So if it's that kind of a situation, you may have to go that route and get into the fabric and the soundproofing baffle. And you can either make them and find great fabric to put over those things, or the other thing you could do would be to hang very heavy theatrical draping, very thick and dense draping about 2 inches from the wall. That is the, offending wall next door to you. And what that does is it creates space between the drywall and that curtain. It's very much like soundproofing 101. If you have distance between surfaces, and there's an air gap, then that sound will kind of trap in between it and stop at the dead aspect of that wall treatment, which in our case would be that large curtain that was hanging across the wall. And, it may sound a bit strange to have that in the house, but you could really dress it up and make it look quite beautiful as a theatrical element to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about...
You could hang pictures over it.
Yeah.
Maybe another 2 inches away
Layering.
from it, or anything like that. Yeah.
We want to make a sponge of fabric, right? I mean, even pillows will do some absorption.
And then when it comes to the floor, you can, if you're building it and you're starting over, you could do stuff. Use this product called vinyl mass loaded vinyl, and it's like very dense vinyl panels that go underneath the flooring system for hardwood. So if you go ahead and get that stuff and then put your hardwood over it, you don't hear the high heels or the kids jumping up and down quite as much. So that's another great technique to use. But a lot of great things to do that you can do yourself with fabrics and throw rugs and heavy gauge curtains, even sealing up cracks in windows and stuff like that. Dual glazed windows obviously help considerably if you're getting sounds from the outside of the house.
And if you walk around in an inflatable suit, then you too will be.
You can wear an HVAC suit, yeah, and then your conversation would be like, "Oh, honey," you can do that as well.
But it's all about.
Go ahead.
No, it's all about doing as much as you can to pad. Basically, you're creating a padded cell. I hate to say it, but I mean, have you seen how Herman Miller? I've on this other website. They have. There's so many of them. They really have come up with beautiful graphic fabric, acoustical panels.
Yeah, it's great because apartment dwellers are always kind of held hostage by that soundproofing issue unless the builder spends 30% more on actual soundproofing material. If you're in an older apartment building, especially in those urban centers, man, they're just going to be terrible, and you'll hear everything next to you. And like for example, you're in a motel somewhere, and you got that age-old horrible thing of hearing the guy next door going, "Oh," while he's sleeping.
Oh no.
And it's just because they didn't do any insulation between the walls, and it just literally travels straight through.
Yeah, and then you're counting how many times, how many beats go before the guy.
Exactly, you can hear his heartbeat to the
geez.
point where you want to kill yourself.
Well, besides the sound,
and then there's a whole other element too, where small spaces don't necessarily have to feel small. And I think there's a lot of misconception out there in terms of the design in small spaces. People always ask me, if I use big tiles in a small room, is it going to make the room feel smaller? Well, the answer is no. It's just the same size room, but it may be the perception of having a larger tile, which someone along the lines of history someday said you have to use little tiles in a little bathroom. Well, it's absolutely not true. I think it's actually opposite. I've always gone for the larger tiles in the smaller bathroom floor, and I think it makes it look much better. There's less grout joints. It ends up being a way easier floor to handle and take care of. So I think we have to be careful when we stereotype what is and is not supposed to be in a small space.
Right. And I think a single big piece of furniture sometimes can also kind of play tricks with your eye. You know what I mean? And also if you put furniture in the center of the room as opposed to everything up against the walls, sometimes like 4 chairs in that center area can make the room feel cozier and in some ways bigger. Have you noticed that?
I have noticed that, and also things as simple as your wall treatment or your art that you hang on the wall. There's a couple of great things to do, especially on a bedroom wall or a main living room anchor wall. Where instead of having one big piece of art, you could do lots of smaller framed items to give you the illusion of much more space, because there's smaller items on the wall, right? Not one big piece. So that's a really effective way to do things as well. And then also kind of to the point of clutter. Clutter makes a huge room feel small, and obviously it's going to make a small room feel even smaller. So I think a lot of times people have a tendency to want to fill their houses with crap, essentially. So if you have the ability to kind of purge out some stuff and just feature some items and honor them with little shelving systems and great lighting that features each individual thing, it gives you a sense of a little more space in your environment.
And in terms of color, I think that, typically the stereotype is to go with lighter colors, how that will make the room feel, quote-unquote, bigger. But on the other hand, I think that if you paint the ceiling a color, sometimes that seems to play tricks with the mind as well and looks like the room is larger.
Right, exactly. And also even when it comes to paint detail or a wainscoting down below and then a paint detail above, if you break up walls with, either striping or wainscoting or fabric panels on one part, paint on the other, that gives you the illusion of height. Even sometimes crown molding can help out. It can close a room down a little bit too if it's too big, but if it's the appropriate size, it just elevates the eye like classic architecture does, where your eye kind of wants to travel upward because there's something of visual interest up on the ceiling to make your eye do that. So and that's a really good tip.
Have you noticed how, if you've ever been in a hotel where you're in a small hotel room, how the trick that they use, and it seems to apply to small spaces anywhere, over the bed they'll have this really large landscape painting. and it may just be nothing in particular. You don't even care about the painting, but the way that that large frame sits above the bed, it seems to somehow create a virtual window, and it makes the small space look bigger, especially if it's of some kind of a landscape, the rolling hills, a sunset, or something. It kind of takes your eyes out and beyond.
That's exactly right. And another great trick, I remodeled a lot of places in Los Angeles that were high-rise units. And a lot of times the designers would come up with great ways to creatively use mirror to enhance the feeling and the depth of the room itself. So, you're getting the reflection of city lights, for example, in some mirror panel that's in your living space that just gives you a more visual interest in the space itself.
Or like you were saying, the artwork, instead of one mirror, like a series of mirrors, like almost like a tapestry of mirrors.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's real creative ways to do. Yeah, I mean, there's a perception where you got mirrors everywhere and it's a little cheesy, but if you do it artfully and tastefully, like anything, it can be a very, very effective tool to make a small space seem a little bit larger.
Well, when we come back, we're going to head outdoors. And have you ever thought about using PVC to accessorize your outdoor space?
I have, and this thing that I saw you were kind of coming to us with is really exciting. I can't wait to talk about it.
Well, we're going to talk about it. It's really taken a lot of people by surprise. It's been around for a long time, fences, pergolas, and so forth. But what's the benefit of this? How's it going to make your outdoor living experience enhanced? We're going to find out next on Home Wizards, as we love to help improve your home and improve your life. Eric Stromer, Cindy Dole. We're back in a moment.
That you wear